Imagine sitting on a wooden porch in Kyoto, looking at 15 rocks in a bed of raked gravel, and slowly realizing that your brain is being manipulated by a 500-year-old algorithm. That is not a metaphor. In 2002, scientists ran that garden through a computer and found a hidden structure built into the empty space, aimed at the exact spot where you are sitting. Whoever designed it never left a name. That garden is number 1 on this list. Before we get there, we go back to a summer afternoon in 1960, when a university student stood in front of the most precious statue in Japan, reached out, and snapped its finger off. And we visit the grave of the emperor who built this city, which historians doubt is really his, and which no one on Earth is allowed to open. These are 10 ancient structures in Kyoto that no one can fully explain. Number 10. The three-legged gate of Uzumasa. Step off a small tram in western Kyoto and walk a few quiet minutes into Uzumasa, and you reach a shrine locals call Kaiko no Yashiro, the Shrine of the Silkworm. It appears in imperial records 1,000 years old, and most days almost nobody is there. Behind the main hall, in a sunken basin that was once a spring-fed pond, stands a torii unlike any other in Japan. 3 pillars instead of 2, forming a perfect triangle around a mound of sacred stone. Japan has roughly 80,000 shrines, and the few 3-pillared gates elsewhere are modern copies of this one. A torii has a front and a back. You pass through it into sacred space. So here is the question the shrine has never answered. How do you enter a gate with no way through? This one surrounds the sacred instead of pointing at it. The shrine sits in Hata territory, the immigrant clan that dominated this valley before Kyoto existed. In 1908, a Waseda scholar named Yoshiro Saiki argued the Hata had carried Christian ideas east along the Silk Road, and the triangle was a trace of the Trinity in a Kyoto pond. Mainstream historians dismantled his evidence. The theory refuses to die, because nobody has produced a better one. The gate standing today was rebuilt in 1831, copying a form of unknown age. A gate is supposed to tell you where the sacred begins. This one keeps that to itself. The people who raised that gate buried their dead nearby, and the stones are so large a modern neighborhood had to be built around them. Number 9. The Snake Mound. 10 minutes south, the streets turn residential. Houses, bicycles, laundry. Then the road bends, and in the middle of the block sits a heap of megaliths the size of a small building. This is Hebizuka Kofun, the Snake Mound, named for the snakes that once nested in its stones. The exposed skeleton of a burial chamber from around the year 600 and the largest stone chamber in Kyoto Prefecture. Its capstones weigh as much as loaded trucks, set without wheels, cranes, or iron tools. The mound that sealed it was stripped for farmland centuries ago, and the suburbs grew around what remained. Who commands labor like that? The working assumption is that a Hata chieftain lies here, the same family behind the 3-legged gate. Remember that name Hata, because it is going to keep coming back. But the tomb was emptied long ago, and no record preserves a name. To stand inside, you knock on a door in the neighborhood, and a resident hands you the key to a 1,400-year-old grave. Children walk past it on their way to school every morning. Somebody important enough to justify all that stone rests here, and the neighborhood built around him does not know his name. The Hata built stone houses for their dead. Number 8. The rock seat on Mount Matsuo. On the western edge of the city stands Matsunu Taisha, established by the Hata in 701. Every year, brewery workers from across Japan haul sake barrels here to thank a god that does not live in the buildings. The origin of this place is partway up the mountain behind them, a massive rock formation called the Iwakura, the rock seat of the god. In the oldest layer of Japanese religion, before shrine architecture existed, divinity descended into the landscape, and great stones were its favorite seats. It is worship older than Buddhism in Japan, older than the idea that a god needs a roof. How long it went on before 701, nobody knows. The shrine itself calls its founding a formalization, not a beginning. Sit with that for a second. The buildings below are 1,300 years old, and they are the young part. The rock has no date. A rock with no date is one problem. Number 7 is a forest with too many dates, stacked one on top of another. Number 7. The forest that is older than the city. Where the Takano and Kamo rivers meet in the north of the city is a wedge of primeval forest called Tadasu no Mori, and buried inside it is Shimogamo Shrine, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. How does anything get older than the city it sits in the middle of? Kyoto was founded in 794. When Emperor Kanmu moved his capital here, Shimogama was already there. Court records mention fence repairs in the 6th century, so when the capital arrived, worship here had already run longer than the entire history of the United States has run today. And when city archaeologists dug in the forest, they found settlement traces reaching through the Yayoi period into the Jomon era, which reaches back past the pyramids of Egypt. The shrine belonged to the Kamo clan, the other great family that ruled this basin before the emperors. Why they fixed their most sacred site at this exact river junction was never written down. The capital adopted the Kamo shrines as its protectors, and every May, the Aoi Matsuri procession still walks from the old palace to this forest, on a route older than the country most of the marchers were born in. Kyoto is 1,200 years old. When the capital arrived, this forest was already ancient. The city was built around the shrine. The Kamo ruled the rivers on the plain. Number 6 waits upstream, at the source, where a goddess is said to have parked her boat and never left. Number 6. The boat under the stones. Follow the Kamo River 12 kilometers north into the mountains, and you reach Kibune, a village of lanterns and inns below Kifune Shrine, home of the deity of water and rain. For centuries, when drought or flood threatened the capital, imperial messengers came up this valley with gifts. For rain, a black horse. For clear skies, white. When live horses grew too costly, the court sent painted wooden plaques instead, and by the shrine's own tradition, those became the ima. The tablets sold at nearly every shrine in Japan today. Nobody knows when Kifune was founded. Even the official registers list its origin as unknown, and its own records note a rebuilding in 666, over a century before Charlemagne was crowned. It was already old enough to need rebuilding before most of Japanese history was written. The founding survives only as a story, so hear it the way the shrine tells it. A goddess named Tamayori Jaime sails a yellow boat out of Osaka Bay, up the Yodo, up the Kamo, into water that gets colder and narrower until it runs out entirely. Here, at the spring, where the river begins, build my shrine, she says, where the boat rests. At the inner sanctuary, 700 meters upstream, you find the ending of that story, an oval heap of fitted stones, taller than a person. The Funagata Ishi, the boat-shaped rock. Tradition holds the actual boat lies underneath. So how hard would it be to check? One excavation, that is all. In 13 centuries, it has never happened, and the shrine has made clear it never will. Nobody has ever looked under the stones. If you are finding this as strange as we are, drop a thumbs up, because number 5 is a ritual the whole city performs every August, and no one can tell you when it started. Number 5, the firebeds of the 5 mountains. On the night of August 16th, the lights of Kyoto dim, and giant characters of fire ignite on the mountains around the city. This is Gozan no Okuribi, the send-off fires of Obon, sending the spirits of the dead home. The most famous is the Daimonji, the character Dai, meaning great. Its strokes run 80, 160, and 120 meters, built from 75 fixed firebeds, stone, and concrete hearths set permanently into the slope. 4 other mountains carry more. The firebeds have owners. Specific families hold specific hearths, passed down like an inheritance, and on the afternoon of the 16th, you can watch them climbing with bundles of pine, doing a job their great-grandparents did on the same square meters of mountain. So when did it start? Ask anyone in Kyoto and watch what happens. Here is the mystery, and it is a mystery of silence. The earliest written record of the fires dates only to the early 1600s, and it describes them as already established. That should not be possible. Medieval Kyoto was obsessively documented, its courtiers and monks keeping daily diaries for centuries, and before the 1600s, those diaries say nothing about the fires. Either Japan's most visible public ritual escaped every diarist in the city, or it appeared, fully formed, with no recorded start. Every August, 1 million people watch a ritual with no beginning. Number 5. Burns above the city. Number 4 sits downtown at street level, and archaeology recently made its mystery worse. Number 4, the Navel Stone. In the middle of Kyoto's business district, boxed in by glass, stands a small hexagonal temple called Rokakudo, founded, legend says, in 587 by Prince Shotoku, 2 centuries before Kyoto existed. In its courtyard sits a low 6-sided stone with a hollow center, the Heso Ishi, the Navel Stone, said to mark the exact center of Kyoto. The story attached to it is stranger than the stone. So picture the year 794. Kanmu's planners are drawing the capital's grid, and one of the new streets runs straight through the temple. The court prays, and according to the legend, the hexagonal hall picks itself up and moves 15 meters north out of the street's path on its own. The navel stone marks where it stood before it walked. Then archaeology got involved. Digs around the site have recovered material only from centuries after Kyoto's founding, and most historians now date the temple to that era, not 587. The legend probably is not true, so the mystery is solved, right? Not quite, because that creates a new problem. If the temple is younger than the city, nobody can say what the stone originally was, or how a working temple in the heart of the capital acquired a false origin story everyone accepted. Debunking the legend did not explain the stone. It orphaned it. A city of 1.5 million grew outward around a stone that says it is the belly button. The stone stays. You would think a city that tracks its own navel could track its founder's grave. It could not. Number 3. The lost tomb of the man who built Kyoto. Emperor Kanmu founded this city in 794, named it Heian-kyo, and set the grid its streets still follow. He died in 806, while Charlemagne ruled Europe, and was buried at a site recorded as Kashiwabara in the hills of today's Fushimi ward. Now, here is a question that should be impossible. How do you lose an emperor? Then Japan lost him. Wars burned the city and its archive, above all the Onin War of the 1460s. And by the Edo period, nobody could say which Fushimi mound held the founder of the capital. In 1880, the Meiji government settled it by decree, designating the current site. Joggers pass its gate every morning, unaware there's a question here at all. Here is what makes this entry different. This is not a mystery with no answer. The answer physically exists in the ground, a short dig away, but imperial mausolea are closed to excavation, and the Imperial Household Agency has held that line for over a century, allowing little beyond brief walkthrough surveys. The evidence sits under the grass, protected by the institution whose history it would confirm or embarrass. The man who built Kyoto has an official grave and a real grave. No one is allowed to learn if they are the same place. Which of these have you stood in front of without knowing any of this? Tell us in the comments, and stay put, because number 1 is missing a name, a date, and a meaning at once. First, number 2, because the strangest unexplained structure in Kyoto. Number 2, the clan that built Kyoto and vanished. In Uzumasa, where this countdown began, stands Koryuji, by chronicle account Kyoto's oldest temple, founded in 603, before there was a country called England. Its founder was the clan leader Hata no Kawakatsu, and the statue he built it to house still exists. The Muroku Bosatsu, a slender figure seated in thought with fingers raised toward its cheek, was listed first on Japan's Register of National Treasures. Even the statue is a puzzle. It is carved from red pine, the standard wood of Korean workshops, while nearly every Japanese sculpture of that era used camphor. Carved abroad or by immigrant hands here, specialists still disagree. And now, we come back to that summer afternoon in 1960. A university student is standing in front of it, close enough to see the grain of the wood. Nobody knows what passed through his mind. What we know is that he reached out, touched the figure, and the finger came away in his hand. He was caught. The finger was restored, and the best explanation he could offer was that he had been overwhelmed by its beauty. What makes a person do that? He could not say, and neither can anyone since. The statue had survived 1,300 years of wars and fires. It could not survive one man's need to touch it, which brings us to the Hata themselves. The chronicles say they arrived from the continent in waves, thousands at a time, claiming descent from the first emperor of China. Most scholars think their real origin was Korea, but the question has never been closed. What is not in question is what they did. They tamed the Katsura River, brought silk and sake, founded Matsuno at number 8, raised the gate at number 10, and lie under the megaliths at number 9. And in 711, a Hata named Irogu enshrined a rice deity on a mountain south of the city. That deity was Inari, and the mountain is Fushimi Inari, the most visited shrine in Japan, drawing 10 million people a year. Then the capital arrived. The court absorbed their wealth and their gods, and the Hata faded from the record. Even the name Uzumasa, a hata title, has defeated 1,000 years of scholarship. A clan whose origin cannot be confirmed built Kyoto's oldest temple, oldest shrines, and most visited sacred site, then dissolved into the city they made possible. Thousands photograph what the hata started every day. Almost none will ever hear the name. Everything so far has been missing something. A name, a date, a grave, or permission. Number 1 is missing all of them. Number 1. The garden that refuses to explain itself. You already know where number 1 is, because you have been sitting in front of it since the first seconds of this video. Inside a Zen temple in northwest Kyoto, called Ryowanji, is a walled rectangle of raked white gravel, 25 meters long and 10 deep. Set into it are 15 stones in 5 groups, ringed by moss. No trees, no water, no flowers. That is the entire garden, laid out around the time Columbus was crossing the Atlantic. It is arguably the most famous garden on the planet, visited by 1 million people a year. And here is what all that attention has established. Nobody knows who designed it, exactly when, or what it means. The temple was established in 1450 and burned twice, and scholars still argue whether today's layout is the original. Every attribution to famous painters and monks lacks evidence. The only names physically connected to the garden are 2 chiseled into the back of one stone, Kotaro and Hikojiro, believed to be Kawaramono, laborers from the riverbanks at the bottom of medieval society. If they were the designers, the most celebrated work of Japanese art was made by 2 men whose class was not permitted to sign it, and the signature they left anyway hides on the back of a rock. Then, there is the counting problem. If you ever go, try this yourself. Pick any spot on the veranda and count the stones. You will see at most 14 of the 15. One is always hidden behind another. Move, and a different stone disappears. Tradition holds that only the enlightened perceive the 15th. Interpretations have piled up for 500 years. A tiger carrying cubs across a river. Islands in an empty sea. Mountains above clouds. The designer wrote down nothing, so every theory remains a theory. The architectural historian Gunter Nitschke reached the conclusion most specialists share. The garden symbolizes nothing. It is an arrangement, and the arrangement itself is the point, which only sharpens the question of what it is doing. In 2002, a team under Gert van Tonder at Kyoto University analyzed the garden mathematically and published in Nature. The empty space between the rock groups is not random. It forms a hidden branching structure, like the limbs of an invisible tree, and its trunk converges on the traditional viewing spot on the veranda. Shift the stones even slightly in a model, and the pattern collapses. Someone, 5 centuries ago, designed the emptiness itself with precision, aimed directly at the place where you sit. So go back to that porch. The calm you feel there is not an accident. It is the output of a design, still running exactly as intended, 5 centuries after its maker walked away. We do not know that person's name or what they were trying to say. The garden has been studied by monks, art historians, psychologists, and computer scientists, and it has never once explained itself. That is why it tops this list. Not because it is the oldest thing in Kyoto, but because the gap between how closely the world has looked and how little it actually knows is the widest of anything in this city. Kyoto is not a museum. It is a 1,200-year-old question that 1.5 million people happen to live inside. The gates, the tombs, the forests, and the gardens are still here, and the answers left with the people who built them. So settle the big one in the comments. Is Ryowanji a deliberate masterpiece by 2 laborers who were never allowed to sign it, or a beautiful accident that 5 centuries of viewers have turned into genius? One answer means the greatest artist in Japanese history has no name. The other means the meaning was ours all along. Tell us which side you take. If you liked watching this video, consider subscribing to the channel and pushing the like button. I'll see you in the next one.